members of Te Tato, Rural and Lakes Committees, no mai haramai, welcome to our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting today, Thursday the 10th of September 2020. We also have members of the public present, the media, and good morning, Felix, and of course our staff. So welcome to you too. We are streaming live, so to those watching from afar, no mai haramai, welcome to our meeting this morning. Please do keep your phones off the desk and turned off. There will be a break taken a little later in the meeting so that you can clear your urgent messages. May I ask, please, if we could all stand, and Mrs. Trumper, thank you, I'll invite you to open our meeting with a karakia. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tū tawa mai I runga, tū tawa mai I raro, tū tawa mai I roto, tū tawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai, te mori tū, te mori ora, ki te katoa, homi e, hui e, tāki e.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Apologies. I do have one apology this morning from Councillor Tapsell. Yes, Your Worship.
Just for lateness, Councillor Donaldson is returning from Te Puia from an opening of new students.
Thank you. So may I have a mover and a seconder, please, at the apologies and the notice for late attendance? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wang, and thank you, Councillor Yates. Moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Carried. Any declarations of interest this morning? Ms. Marks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to note that I have done a written submission on behalf of myself, not under any of my representation for the housing strategy, but I just wanted to note it now for the staff report later.
Thank you. Was it submitted in your own name?
Yes, just my own name.
Thank you. So noted. Thank you. Items of urgent business. Urgent items. No items. Thank you. Oh, we will be finished by 10:30. Confirmation of the minutes. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting minutes of the 13th of August 2020. True and correct record. Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Thank you, Councillor Kaifong. Are there any changes, amendments to our meeting before I put that motion? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the minutes of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting minutes of the 13th of August 2020 be confirmed as a true and correct record. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Carried. Staff reports. The first of our staff reports, the draft Eastside Structure Wellness Plan. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, to receive that plan? Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Thank you, Mr. Berryman-Kemp. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Carried. Now, I think that's JP and JP. Oh, yes, JP and Lee. Morena Korua. Look forward to your presentation this morning on this exciting wellness plan, and it is. Kia ora.
Morena, everyone. I'm just briefly introducing Lee, who's just going to take us through a bit of a presentation. So, as some councillors will be aware, Lee ran a briefing session for councillors. So again, this covers some of the material some of you would have already seen, but for those who missed that, it's probably quite important just to get a feel for how this plan fits into our wider locality planning approach. So I'll just hand over to Lee at this point. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge Ralph Mosen, who's a member of the Tato Panamu Collective representing the Rotorua.
Can you start again, please, Lee, and just move, thank you.
Well, sorry
and
about
speak
that.
And turn your microphone on, thank you.
Yeah, great. So, kia ora. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge Ralph Mosen, who's here today. He's representing Tato Panamu Collective in his role with Te Roro o Te Rangi and also O Whata Marae. And I'd also like to acknowledge some of our staff who have been pivotal in the creation of the plan. So that's Jason Ward, Simon Thurston, and also Rob Griffiths. Thank you. So in terms of plan, This diagram here just provides an overview of locality planning in which the Eastside Structural Wellness Plan sits. So at the top, we have a range of guiding documents, and I'll particularly note the Tātou Panamu Collective Strategy that's foremost in terms of the influence on the Eastside Structural Wellness Plan. We then have the locality planning process, and this is a process that's specific to Eastside Rotorua, although some components of it could transfer to the other localities as well. So this includes taking a strategic and partnership approach to prioritising and responding to the aspirations of communities. It provides a roadmap for how to get there. It's a tool for supporting long-term, 10 plus years joined up planning and action internally and also across a range of partners. So our hapu, community, business, local government, central government and funders. It's an opportunity to leverage off co-work streams and co-investment, and it aims to shape the physical environment as well as the activities, social, economic, cultural, environmental, that take place within these localities. So you'll see that there are the two threads that run through locality planning.
Excuse me, Lee, I'm not sure if it's me, but I'm actually having difficulty hearing, and if I am, I'm sure the people who are watching live streaming, so please do move your, well, it might be me, but thank you. And
Okay.
you might have to speak up louder because, you know, thank you. I do want
Okay.
those who are watching from afar to be able to hear as well. Thank you.
Okay. Basically the locality planning is around coordinating co-work streams, co-investment, and making sure that any activities or work happening within the Eastside are reflecting the aspirations and the visions of our community there. So there are those two threads, the people and place. People refers to the people, of course, and the activities that happen within that rohi or area. And there are some potential work streams that fall underneath people. These work streams have come from some work that was carried out in Christchurch in terms of locality planning, and they're referred to as the building blocks of that process. Then we move over to the place, and this is where the Eastside Structure Wellness Plan fits most clearly. This has come from community. It reflects the community's aspirations and vision for that particular area. It has a whole range of intended outcomes and actions for Eastside Rotorua. We know that the Eastside Structural Wellness Plan will inform a structure plan for Eastside and then some possible changes to the district plan as well. So underneath the place, there's also a number of potential building blocks or work streams that can be focused on in that particular area. So what is the Eastside Structural Wellness Plan? It provides a framework for future development and growth within Eastside Rotorua. It was developed in a working partnership between the Tātou Panamu Collective and Council, and it's based on trusting and authentic relationships. It's informed by the Tātou Panamu strategy that reflects the aspirations of Eastside communities. Was implemented with a community-led and shared decision-making approach. It's acknowledgement that there is diversity within Eastside and we need to give everybody an opportunity to provide feedback. So this is the starting platform, and the consultation is part of that process to seek the diversity and the multiple voices within Eastside Rotorua. There's an appreciation of the connection between people and place. And also just want to acknowledge the support of our Eastside hapu. It's pretty unique and special to have our 5 hapu from the rohi sitting around the tipu alongside our community. So next steps, we've got the consultation process that's open at the moment, and that closes on the 16th of October. The next step is to form a deliberation working group. So that group will be looking at the feedback that comes back via the consultation process and seeing what we need to keep, chuck or create. In terms of that working group, we would very much like to have representation on there from this body. And there are some suggestions in terms of the aspects or the qualities that we would like from someone that would sit on that working group. So it's an appreciation of the connection between people and place. It's support of a continued community-led and shared decision-making process, having an understanding of how to work in partnership based on trusting and authentic relationships, and also having an understanding of how to positively work alongside hapu. Kia ora.
Thank you. Is that the presentation, is it? Thank you. Thank you very much. Before I ask councillors if they'd like to ask some questions, I'd want to, tēnā koe, Mr. Mosen, is it Mr. Mosen, is it? Tēnā koe, and thank you for your mahi over, I suspect, many years. I just wondered if you'd like to add anything to the discussion this morning before we ask councillors. You're most welcome to come up and say a few words if you'd like to. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but we don't often get somebody who's been there and has been a major contributor to the plan. So you're most welcome this morning. Tēnā koe.
Well, kia ora everyone. Kia ora Stevie. I've been with Tātou Pounamu for 8 years now, and it is a consensus approach, community-led way that we work out on the east side. I can say that in 8 years we've never once had a vote. We've always come to a consensus agreement on every decision that we've made, and sometimes that takes a bit of time. You've got to go back and revisit, and go back and revisit again. But, you know, isn't it good to come at a decision from an approach where everybody's got skin in the game because everyone's happy? They might not be 100% happy, but 80% happy, everyone can then work and paddle in the same direction. And that's been the approach that Tātou Pounamu's operated on from the day one. And it's really exciting to have council coming to the table and partnering with the community rather than coming along and consulting with the community. And I say that because if anyone doesn't know what consulting means, have a look at the Oxford Dictionary and have a look at the definition of consulting, because it's not very flattering, and it certainly depowers one party. And so we're really excited, and we're really looking forward to this being adopted and moving forward into the future. And that's all I'll say. Any questions? No?
Thank you. And I see that Hingatu's there as well. Tēnā koe, Hingatu. Nice to see you this morning here with us. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, and it's just great to hear that that there was a consent, you know, right through the whole process, consensus all around. Isn't that wonderful to actually know that everybody's voice is being valued and has been taken into consideration when the deliberations and through the deliberations and planning stages. So councillors, I'll open it up for any questions and start with Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship.
Could just signal, I'd like to indicate that recommendation 3.2, I'd like to lie on the table. I think we've got to give a lot of consideration. You pointed out, Lee, about the need for looking at the right set of capabilities and input from elected members. So either we change the recommendation to say that an elected member be appointed, because I feel community board members and Te Tata or Te Arawa may have the very capabilities, and you're saying in that recommendation that it should be a councillor only. And I think it's time for us to think a bit differently too about our input into such a significant piece of work that reflects many components that are quite complex when they come together. So I just want to put that on the table. But could I also say thank you, Ralph, it's fantastic you came to the table. In our workshop, I think many of us didn't realise how long this process has been. And this is a product that is a great lesson for us, that if we can get the Rotorua plan working like this one, and this component, then this district will be significantly different to it is today. And Lee, also, a lot of councillors don't realise that your background before you joined us as an organisation was very significant involvement in the Eastside community. so you're a bit whakamā about that, but it's about a high trust relationship that manages to work together to get such a comprehensive wellness plan to us today, and I want to congratulate you for that. It's an exciting time to get this, and that's why I seek that recommendation 3.2 just lie on the table so we give it more considered thought.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy for that point 2 under the recommendations lie on the table. So I'm happy for that. Thank you. I've got a few councillors who would like to speak. Councillor Yates and then Mrs. Trumper, and I'm taking other thank you names as well. Thank you, Councillor Yates.
Tēnā koe, and through you, Madam Chair, e hara ko tēnei he pātai, but it is a compliment to the team to finally get this to the table. I do want to acknowledge you, Ralph. I also want to acknowledge the memory of Rangi Pairua, who I know fought vehemently for this kaupapa to finally see the light of day. Nā reira, kia koutou, o te taira whiti o Rotorua, nei rā te mihi kau atu kia koutou. I look forward to also seeing our communities benefit out there, and especially our tamariki mokopuna, because it is a thriving community out there, and the potential within our tamariki is yet to be realised still. So, tēnā koutou.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Mrs. Trumper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Lee, this is an amazing piece of work that the community have put together, and I think that this is really going to lead the way across our district and how council actually work with our communities, and it is really, I'm going to say, an incredible document. I would like to endorse Her Worship's views. When I first looked at it, I thought elected members rather than councillor, and I thought that this actually fitted in with Te Tātou, or, one of the boards, because we're all elected, and I think if you want authentic and trusting, then you need to be working with people from that community rather than outside. And that was pretty much where I was heading with that one.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Congratulations to all of those involved. This is a very comprehensive piece of work. It's taken a huge amount of time, and I appreciate the effort that's gone into it. And I'd like, if I could, to have clarification. This is not a criticism, but a clarification on the balance of participation. It's quite clear from reading the documentation that our very diverse communities over on the east side, Ngāpuna, Ofota and Hannah's Bay, have been closely involved all the way through. And I wondered the extent to which Linmore residents have been involved. Can someone clarify that for me? Thank you.
So in terms of the consultation that's led into this document and the community aspirations, all of the communities have had the opportunity to have their input. Input has been collected during family events, any sort of activity that's happened with a community focus within the east side. We also have the kahui ako, who sit around the Tātou Panamu Collective, and Linmore Primary School is a member of that, and also Makoia Intermediate and Lakes High, of which Linmore whānau do attend as well.
Thank you. One other question, yes, a supplementary. I notice that the scope does not include, overtly anyway, housing development, and there have been some interactions between council and developers out on the top side of Eastside. Now, I wonder what part they're going to play in the development of this locality plan. There is quite an opportunity up there, as I understand it. Thank you.
So I think if you have a look at the maps that are within the Eastside Structural Wellness Plan, you'll note that development is one of those components, a housing development in there, particularly in the area furthest from the lake. And I know that we've had consultations with those that are involved in that development. I'll just ask. Simon, would you like to maybe make a comment?
Yes, so we'll be working also certainly hill there, opposite the
Yes,
airport.
through you, Chair. I was referring to the development closer to Tarawera Road, right, almost up on the ridge line, on the edge of the caldera.
Sure, yeah, we've been working through, obviously as a planning team, with landowners on that area as well, and through their aspirations, I guess, to develop their land through the planning process, duty planning process over the last couple of years. There's certainly been an increase in those willing to develop, as we've seen with like the Redwood Park development, and also so we are working closely with those landowners through the planning process currently to realise their aspirations, and hopefully we can and that will be implemented through this wildlands plan as well, through consultation.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Madam Chair, if I can add one further piece to that too. So certainly it's coming from a planning perspective, but Stavros and I have met with a number of the developers and significant landholders on that eastern side previously, and as we've reported to you previously, that led to us taking the decision around the stormwater master planning approach. So they have been engaged directly with that. So that's the sort of the infrastructure planning aspect, which links to the RMA planning and district plan change process that was signalled there by Simon as well. So there has been a number of different layers within the Eastside planning that have been undertaken with and directly with owners in that area.
Thank you. Councillor Kai Fong and then Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions around the councillor representation. Because the wellness plan has different aspects, including the business links and transport capability, which is not just around the people that live in that area, would you consider that the representative...
Councillor Kai Fong, thank you. I'm not going to take any discussion on that. You've just heard that the Mayor has asked that that lay on the table, and there will be some discussion on that a little later.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
My second question was just around, would there be a possibility to consider not just a councillor or representative, but maybe it should be 2 or more, because the plan covers more than just the aspect of those people that are living in that region. So perhaps if I just leave that comment on the table, yes, for consideration at a later date.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And it will be part of the consideration that Her Worship raised before. Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I acknowledge all the mahi that's been done out there too, from whānau from out of the east side there. Just a quick question, Lee. Can I ask, is the Ruamata Kura kaupapa involved in this thing? It's just that I see the boundary line sort of doesn't include them.
So at the information session, you did raise that partai there, and from that session and that time, we've been looking at that, and also our other kura kaupapa as well, how we can make sure that they've got some engagement. So that's something I can come back to you on.
Thank you. Mr. Berryman-Kemp.
Yes, kia ora. Thank you, Madam Chair. Lee, Ralph, tēnā kō rua, great to have you here. One thing first of all, actually I think what we're seeing is the product of a extremely well done community-led inclusive process. My question, so well done with that, because I can see an awful lot here. I love the way that the map sets out the boundaries in the 4PO, using some of our traditional markers as well, which I think is part of, it's indicative of the sort of process that has been gone through. My question is probably more for JP, in terms of can this process be extended to other Rotorua locations? Because right now what I'm seeing is a really strong east side plan. That's great. No, east side for life. I live there. But I can see in the plan and the degree of community engagement and acknowledge Ralph's point about the fact that it's been 8 years, but what is the potential to extend this approach across the rest of our Rotorua communities so that they can own their plans as well?
Madam Chair, it's an excellent question actually, and it's one that is fundamental to our wider discussions about locality planning in general. And I might just throw across to Lee to probably finish off this one. But one of the situations is, my understanding is there's a lot of communities looking east at this as the right approach and really our own community good practice that needs to be emulated for the unique circumstances of different communities. So there is a conversation underway about capacity, how to put in place those steps to start taking this process forward in other parts of the district and the city. So I might have stolen most of what Lee might then add to, but she might be able to sort of add a bit more detail to how that thinking is being considered, certainly in the west side.
Yes, so I think you're right in terms of Eastside. This is a particular community that has its own strengths and opportunities, as all of our communities do. In terms of this process, there is an opportunity for other communities to say, hey, look, we can take aspects of that, but we may need to look at other components that are not there because of the differences across those communities. It's really about having that korero with them and saying, okay, is this a process you'd like to engage in? What sort of capability and capacity do you currently have at the moment? How can we support you as a community if there are some support needs around that capability and capacity? And of course, making sure that the timing's right. So we've been really fortunate that the Tatou Panamu Collective and the Eastside Hapu have been doing a lot of this mahi before. It's building on that mahi. That may not necessarily be the case for some of those other communities. So within the Homes and Thriving Communities strategy, there were 3 other localities that were mentioned. One was Western, one was Nonotaha, and the other one was CBD. So there is some whakaaro, some thoughts around those areas. And as JP said, there's still that thinking taking place. And as I understand it, that korero with those communities, with most of those communities, still needs to happen.
Thank you. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou. Thank you, JP and Leanne, for your fine presentation there. I'm going to touch on something that Eugene had said, and that was how do we tell the rest of Rotorua the story that the East Side deserves what they do now, and when is their time going to come? So we can see that this journey has taken about 8 years. And my question is, while we will go to consultation, the question lies is, what is that one impediment? We look at all the risks. They've been, mana whenua have been spoken to and all, but what is that one, is there any one major factor that can derail this type of project? Or are we just really 99% positive that this is going to go ahead and that we're just needing to get everybody to say yes? And
so yes, it has taken 8 years to get to this place. In terms of moving forward, there's the draft Eastside Structural Wellness Plan. There's then an implementation plan that needs to come out of that. Then there's the structure plan, and then there's the possible changes to the district plan. So although it's taken a while to get to where we are now, there's still a lot of mahi to happen further down the track. I think one of the key things that we need to keep in mind as council is that we can't take for granted the relationships that we currently have. It's a process of relating, not relationship management, where we have contact when we want something or need something. It's about relating on an ongoing way and making sure that those relationships are authentic. So that's something that we really need to keep in mind in terms of moving forward. The other thing is acknowledging that it is a longer term process. So by engaging in the Eastside Structural Wellness Plan, it is more or less saying, hey, look, we are here to see this through in terms of the implementation as well. So just keeping that in mind. And the other thing is just acknowledging that we're not putting too much pressure on our partners, particularly the Tatou Panamu Collective, and that there are still other partners that need to come to the te pū or the table as well to be able to make sure that what's outlined in the Eastside Structural Wellness Plan comes to fruition. So it's more of the same, hopefully, over an extended period of time, but bringing on more partners and more resourcing through those partners as we move forward.
Madam Chair, I'd probably just add one other thing too, which is, you've heard about the integrity and the partnership process that has gone into the development of this plan. With Council having to respond with Te Arawa to the pressures around housing and the development, and obviously it's the next item, the Housing and Thriving Community Strategy, which has almost caught up very rapidly to the work that's been underway for over 8 years. We just have to make sure that we also are very aware not to usurp that work or to push ahead on it. And as we know also that there's been decisions around funding for Tenai Road, and so obviously NZTA is out consulting around their plans for 4-laning up past Isles. So there's actually some risks here that we have to make sure that we remain genuine to the kaupapa of this plan. We go through that process well. We've got our own pressures to start looking at that structure plan and plan changes to enable residential development and the development of Tenai Road. So it's just managing how those pieces are moving to just recognise where the plan is at the moment as well. So that's a risk that we just need to make sure that we throttle those projects to make sure that feedback and the community's expectations around this plan are well integrated into those decisions.
You have a final question. Thank you, Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, thank you for that. What I was alluding to was what Eugene said is now that it's good for receiving that, is that the next communities, now the Western Heights, the Kautus, the Nungutahas, the 8 years of work is a good foundation and a structure. So if this becomes very successful and goes ahead, then most of the corridor is already done, and hopefully that we can roll that out.
Thank you. Thank you very. Did you have a final question? Oh, a comment. If it's a comment.
I'd just like to say each community is quite unique, so it's not a rolling out. It's actually working with those that are willing to work, like the Eastside Collective, with their aspirations and their dreams, and others are signalling to us that they loved that approach. Could we look at that way of working together? But they've got to be willing, and I think that's what we heard very clearly from Lee. It's about relationships, and then you can do great things together. So that's how we'll work. We won't roll this out.
Thank you, Your Worship, yes. And thank you very much for the presentation. And yes, relationships do take time, and this has been, this would not have happened, this plan would not have come to fruition after many years if it hadn't have been for the relationships. The other thing to bear in mind is that there are 5 hapu involved, and for the community to take ownership of their plan, then everybody has to be involved, and particularly the hapu, and so that's absolutely wonderful to see that that's crucial actually to the success of the plan. But Your Worship is correct that every community is different. There usually needs to be a driver, somebody who's actually starting to say that we don't have to let council do it. In fact, we know what our community wants, and we're going to sit together and develop the relationships that will make sure that comes about. So yes, it's a great model, but it's not necessarily portable to other communities. They will decide for themselves when and how and what it is that we want to do. But for the East Side, this is a wonderful example of cooperation, relationship development, and vision. Actually, vision. So thank you so much to everybody involved in bringing this to council and for the presentation, and we look forward to seeing what comes back in terms of feedback from the consultation from the community. So thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you. Kia ora. So that's, was there something else you wanted? Oh, sorry, yes, so we've received that, that's it for that one, yes, and the, sorry, let me just see, the second part left on the table. Thank you. So that's the conclusion of that, of the presentation for that one. Thank you very much for that item. Oh, where are we? Thank you. So, may I have a move? So we're on to our second item. So that the report, He Papakainga, He Hapuri, Turikura, Te Popo Rautaki, the Rotorua Homes and Thriving Communities Strategic Framework be received. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. So we have a mover and a seconder that the report be received. Can I, thank you, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you, that's carried. Kia ora, and kia ora, Rosemary, thank you, and thank you.
Good morning, everyone again. So that we've just gone up a level now, councillors, to the overarching strategy about housing and thriving communities. And I'd just like to just pass on the apologies for the attendance around some of our other ELG members. So obviously we've got Hingatu Thompson here representing the various members. So yeah, a couple of, or certainly one of our ELG members, Tupara Morrison, is just caught within the Auckland sort of limits on travel, so he is unable to join us as well. And we've also got apologies from Jeff and Karen Verco as well. So those people are unable to attend at this time. So really, councillors, we've been out for the feedback on the draft strategy. So I'll just hand over now to Rosemary just to take you through the feedback we received and what's that's meant in the way of amendments to the strategy. But obviously, I think a key point about the strategy, it's written in a context of us also working still with our community and working around the various work streams. So whilst we're writing a strategy, the effort and the work hasn't stopped around the delivery as well. So I'll just hand over to Rosemary now.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for the opportunity to bring this piece of work, which has been my life probably for the last year or so, to you. We've also got some of the other colleagues who've been working with us, so the Housing and Urban Development team and the MSD team in particular are watching on their screens at home. So, yeah. I guess this has been quite a long time in the coming. Its origins are really way back in the spatial plan, identifying our future housing needs. And we also did a housing data review back in September 2016, which at that time there were some really early signs they might have some problems coming with housing, but nothing like what we're seeing now. So it's it's been quite a rapid change in the last 4 years to the situation we find ourselves in now. October, December 2019, we did some initial engagement to inform the housing strategy development. And at that time, there was increasing concern in our community about shortage of housing, increasingly visible homelessness, and rising prices of housing. We also worked quite closely with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and our other partners, so Kāinga Ora, MSD, Lakes DHB, I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody out. And they were a huge support around getting data and analysis and looking at different angles of this problem, which is not just Council's problem. Part of that response, working with Housing and Urban Development, we also established a leadership group, so that was to partner with Te Arawa and also and other senior agencies. Back in February this year, the Minister for Housing announced Rotorua as a priority place to work with, to take a place-based approach, and that again was a huge strength actually to get in behind and acknowledge the issues here. So in June 2020, we got our draft strategic framework out for public engagement. Now, there have been a lot of community engagement all the way along in the development of this, so this was really the next step. And I guess that if we had been listening to our community in the early engagement, then people shouldn't have been too surprised by what they saw when we sent the draft out. And I think that that was largely the case. So we're really pleased with the amount of engagement that happened. We used Facebook to encourage participation, so we had some videos and there were over 12,000 people looked at those and enjoyed them with some local faces. 1,500 people engaged with the 21 posts and they had a conversation or made comments. The purpose of that, though, was really just to garner interest. We used our Let's Talk online facility, and again we had 1,400 people who looked at stuff and knew about it, 160 who then downloaded things or interacted, and 38 who actually significantly engaged and made submissions and significant comment. We had a couple of public workshops, and again people had really good discussion at the tables, really diverse groups of people. We had a huia iwi at Tamata Kapua. We had a meeting directly with our government agency partners as to make sure that the strategy was reflecting their components as well. We talked directly to some rangatahi, and we also had 7 formal written submissions. Oops, the wrong way. So as far as the feedback, and there was a lot of feedback we gathered, we analysed that and grouped that into topics. We talked that through with our ELG partners back and forward, and then we discussed proposed amendments, and again there was a lot of backwards and forwards looking at those amendments in response to the discussion, and we finally came up with our final agreements. I guess from the attached record of the separate elements, you can see there are lots of points to consider and quite diverse perspectives, as well as areas of common agreement. People often engage in quite a lot of detail on topics, which is often more detail than is needed in a strategy, but it's certainly information that we can carry forward into the work streams and definitely be thinking about. Particular stakeholders also indicated the interest to be actively involved in the implementation going forward. We had really strong feedback from our partners Lakes DHB and Waka Kotahi New Zealand Transport Agency in support. And a number of submitters also posed some really good questions, again often seeking more detail or asking how this will be paid for, but it was really clear that people had engaged with the material and had put a lot of thought into their feedback. I've pulled out just a selection of things, and this certainly doesn't represent everything, but some of the things which I thought were highlights. I think there was general support for the direction and the need for partnership. As I said, people asked clarifying questions, including how will things be funded. That was particularly around infrastructure. A lot of the detail and the feedback really supported the success attributes of what a thriving community looks like, about what's the meaning of it, and that importance for whānau. There was quite a lot of support, for detailed progress, but also about the urgency to get on with it. There's definitely a sense we need this and we need to be getting on with it. Some of the difficult issues like community safety, there were really different perspectives on that, but there was agreement that community safety is important for everybody. There was, again, concern about the impact of emergency housing, dependency, how that's going to be solved, and that's a really tough one. And I guess people also identified that we need more housing stock before we can solve the emergency housing problem, as that's another fundamental. There were different perspectives on Māori land and the role of Te Arawa in housing, and people wanted to define the timeframes for emergency transitional housing. There was comment around the role of the market and private commercial developers. People confirmed what we thought were the barriers for Papakainga development. People certainly discussed those. People wanted a bit more detail around healthy home standards, and definitely confirmed the importance of housing as a key determinant of health. Lots of concern and feedback around affordability as an issue, and that's something we changed as a result. People talked about the resource consenting process complexity. People talked about NIMBYism, that whenever there's a change, even if it's a good thing, people are resistant to change, and how do we manage that? A lot of interest in sustainable communities and the role of the environment as part of our community. Definitely support for council addressing barriers, and particularly infrastructure. Comment about Airbnb, and particularly comment from older people and also the disability community around wanting to live in mixed communities and the importance of accessible design to enable that.
And excuse me, Rosemary, I presume everyone knows what NIMBYism means?
So
they might not.
NIMBYism stands in not in my backyard. It's fine in somebody else's backyard, but not in mine. So it's really around people who, change is a hard thing for anyone, and it's people sometimes think that's a really good idea, but over there, not here.
Thank you.
So some of the key changes we've made, and I've put in the paper, I've tried to specify those so that you can actually track them if you want between the draft and the current version. A really big one was community safety. So originally the focus of community safety was very much around the impacts of the homeless community, and particularly in the CBD, but that rapidly changed during COVID, and really the discussion and feedback from our community was that both the focus of the objective and the work stream needed to be about all of our communities, not any one particular place. We introduced a new work stream called Enabling Affordability, because although we talked about affordability and knew that was a real problem, it really needed its own work stream, and there's a lot of things to investigate around affordability that weren't necessarily covered strongly enough in the other work streams. We amended the vision to add accessibility, that front end, and also to rename it. In the middle of that vision it said housing, and we've renamed that kāinga or homes. Again, it's not just about building houses, it's about the meaning of those places. We gave a more positive title to employment and jobs creation is now creating employment and career pathways. And we had quite a lot of measures, and we knew at the time there were a lot, but we didn't want to cull them too quickly. But there's been quite a bit of reducing duplication and refining those measures to be what success will look like. We know some of them will give a feeling of what success looks like, but we may not actually measure them. But it does give a range of ideas as when we're developing up the work streams as what some of the KPIs and what some of the measures of success could look like. So the vision, as I said, we've just introduced the homes kāinga in the middle and added accessibility to that. The work streams, we've simplified this a little bit, as I said, adding in the enabling affordability and as another key plank there. We also reduced the size. We quite a bit of feedback that said we were focused too much on the urgent things on the left, some of which are not really core council business, and it had kind of almost made, I think it was almost more important the way it looked to some people. So we've simply reduced the size of that compared to the work on the right-hand side, just to try and explain that yes, that stuff's urgent, but the other stuff on the right-hand side is also really important to get right in order to try and address some of the stuff on the left. And the next steps, so at the moment we're working with Housing and Urban Development to confirm how a complex program that's cross-government and agency will be led and who's responsible for leading the work streams and projects, because as you'll be aware, some of those things are not led by council, we need other partners to lead them. We're looking at the governance structure and program structure and governance internally, and that'll be led from our project management office. We're developing the framework implementation plan for the whole framework, and we're starting to prioritise the work streams, identifying early, mid and longer term aspects of the implementation. And there's a lot of work underway already, and I guess the locality planning and Eastside is a prime example of that, is that we haven't stopped doing work as is necessary and progressing that while we're waiting for the strategy, which kind of is a bit of an umbrella for many things. So there's certainly been identification of plan changes in the planning team, the infrastructure master planning, there's a lot going on there. We're hearing the business case to seek healthy homes investment. As we talked about the Eastside locality planning and the wellness structure plan, and that's just a small number of things that are going on as we speak. So I might just hand over to Hangatu to say a few words for the ELG.
A tēnā kōrua, a tēnā koutou te ropu ko tai mai nei, kia koe, kani te mihi kia koe tīme koe hoki te tiamana, kani te mihi kia kōrua. Hingatu Thompson, I've been quite lucky to be part of the process actually, but I'm rangi wewahi, I'm whakaue also, and it's quite good to see a project. While it started as a housing strategy, it is very much bigger than that. It is around homes within communities. I just wanted to say that the vision is really important, and it's not, we lose something when we translate it from he papa kāinga, he hāpori tauri kura. The he papa kāinga is that connection to the land, that everyone has that connection. I mentioned this last time we came as well, and he hāpori tauri kura is know, that you're part of it, you really are connected, you're thriving and you're developing. And I actually think the Eastside work is a good example of creating those healthy communities. I wanted to just touch on that. The key for me is the vision, the principles and the objectives, and that all the actions will change, you know, and they might change frequently depending on COVID. But if the framework is right and that council, HUD and everyone working towards an endpoint for Rotorua are working towards those same principles, then I think we've got the right framework in place. I have a concern around the kōrero around mahitahi. Our first principle is the Te Arawa relationship. Nationally, we talk about Te Arawa. Locally, it is hapu and iwi as well. So we have to recognise there's actually not one voice. So I'm not sitting here representing all of Te Arawa, being aware that I'm really pleased to be part of the Te Arawa voice. And I think that's important when you look at implementing the housing strategy, that you do need to engage on a location basis around some developments and around particularly with the hapu as well as the communities in those areas. I do want to just acknowledge though the work with the council, because it's also an unequal partnership in that we don't have resources, all of us coming along and participate, but we have valued how council and council team have responded to our comments. You know, that Rosemary in particular would do 30 pages of work and then we'd pull it apart and she'd happily go away, I think happily, and make those changes. It's a really positive relationship to be in, that we don't have the resources to sit there and do the work, but working with council I think has been really positive. So, ngā mihi kia koutou. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you. So is it open for questions now? Thank you. So we'll have some questions. Mr. Berryman Kemp.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And look, thank you once again. I'm really impressed with this. I think that the outcome generated is a reflection of the process that's engaged in, and certainly, hopefully, that's the way that we'll proceed in the future. The one thing I was interested in, and my question, regarding the feedback that you received, I'm surprised there wasn't more emphasis on the Wood First Buy Local supporting our local forestry processing sector. When I saw some of the feedback, I thought it was great to see that there was stuff on make sure this supports employment, jobs, job creation, training, but I didn't see in the feedback that you put up that much feedback was received on and try and ensure we support our local forestry processing. So was that a feature that did come up? I know that we've discussed this previously in the report, but I wonder if you could answer that, please.
I think when we look at the employment career pathways aspect, we didn't specify Wood First, but I think to me it is implicit that we're looking at when we're supporting local businesses and so on, and supporting sustainable kind of resource use and looking for affordability is, you know, how are those things come in. And I think in the other area, I don't remember where that was. There is another area in there where it's around affordability. Was also looking at local product use and all of those other things around what other ways we could be driving affordability through local products and local design and all those kinds of things. Yeah, it's one of those details that's sitting there, and it'll come up again and again through the work streams, I think.
And Madam Chair, just picking up on that too, some of the feedback we've also received, it's the different channels that we're using to talk to people. So certainly the Forestry and Wood Processing Group have been talking to us directly. You recall that was one of the sector leaders groups that was established during the lockdown period and was coordinated by Rotorua Economic Development. They were very clear in knowing that we had the housing strategy being developed, and they saw the opportunities with us focusing on residential development and responding to the needs for housing, that was a huge opportunity also to grow employment, but also to develop that added value for the Rotorua economy. So we've had that feedback, and if we haven't explicitly included it within the strategy to a high detail. It's actually coming across certainly into the economic recovery discussions that we're having, particularly around that sector group. So very much front of mind, buy local, support local business development, and also really focus on that ability to build houses and use sustainable products for those.
Thank
thank you for that, but just one more part with that too, which I forgot to outline. Look, that's great, thank you, but also, of course, if we can source local, then that's going to impact the climate response due to less mileage, etc. So certainly, I think that the more that we can incorporate this to a locally, it's a locally generated plan. It would be lovely to see it being a totally locally implemented plan.
Thank you. Your Worship.
Yeah, well, congratulations, and thank you, Hingatu, for coming along today too, because having that Te Arawa leadership group component in here was very important to us all. And I love the emphasis on homes. You know, it's not just about houses, it's about our people, how they live and how they're supported in living and how they can get around in our community. The issue for me was about the health and well-being, and I'm looking at you, Hingatu, with another portai that you wear. It was the link with the DHB there for how we can help people to build resilience into home ownership. Is that work underway with the Housing First, Budget Advisory Service, mental health services, and the provision that builds people's readiness to staircase and step into home ownership?
I think there's still a lot of work to do, but the good thing with this not being a housing strategy, but a homes and community strategy, it definitely has objectives that align with that. And so that's where I think the value of the objectives is, that if we use that as a framework for the engagement with these other parties, and we continue to use that as the benchmark that we develop our measures on, and that we'll continue to prioritise it. It's not as far down the track as it could be, but I think it's definitely started.
And my other question there with our resilience and looking at that aspect too, were there many submissions back about looking at, it's a bit of a trendy word, it's the wrong one, the eco-housing subdivision? Because that's where a lot of people are looking at living differently in a supported living environment.
I think, sadly, from my sustainable living hat, it wasn't as strong a view around sustainability themes. There's definitely a part of the community who think that, but we've also got significant deprivation and people coming from a deficit frame where they're really worried about having a home, full stop. And I think when you don't have a home, it's very hard to think around the quality, the other quality attributes in the longer term, because there's this immediate need. I think that generally there's a really strong sense of the importance of the environment and how we live. And I think once people have homes, then they're in a position to think about those other attributes. But at the moment, we've got a lot of deficit, which seems to colour how people view that.
And kia ora, I also think the focus on papakainga is not just an individual building, it's around this a cluster. And so looking at how they live in a positive environment, having a place for kaumātua and for younger people living in the same space. So designing those sort of networks is really important. And there is a strong focus, I believe, in what's coming through around making sure that it is environmentally friendly. So I think it's in there, but as we're saying, I think the actions need to keep developing.
Thank you. Oh, yes. Thank you. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for your presentation. Mine comes around probably knowing in the fact that there will be, in keeping the local, was that there'll be a lot of localism. So I think it'll probably be, from how it's been explained with Papakainga, and that's what I asked fellow Councillor Trevor Maxwell about, is that in keeping cost compression down and trying to build this kind of concept and keeping to just wood first policy is probably going to be hard, but how are we going to achieve such a successful project, with trying to then be on low cost? I think that's the challenge ahead. I don't know if it's a question, but it's more that comment that there will be a lot of localism. There'll be employment in there. There'll be food on the table for lots of people when this project goes up, and it'll bring the communities together. I think it will also put the deficit and equity balance right. So, yeah, I just hope that that mental challenge of trying to sort of just have that wood first policy doesn't become the hurdle in making this project successful.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Yes, thank you for this report. It's very, very interesting indeed. And through you, Chair, my attention focused on the role. It's not a criticism, but the role, the composition, and the products that have been generated by the role of the establishment leadership group. And I wondered if in the future we might expand the scope of that group to include private and commercial developers, or to have a separate parallel strategy involving private and commercial housing developments for the other housing development sectors. So any thoughts, any reflections on how those two sets of functions could be advanced?
I think when we look at the structure of the program, particularly as we go forward, there's kind of governance of the program at a very high level, but within the projects, as those go forward, the people who will be involved in those will certainly be a wide range of other people. And I'm thinking particularly, for instance, the development out east at Wharanui. You know, the project there it's not even council led. We're a partner, but you know, the owner and developer will be significantly involved there. NZTA. I think when it comes to the projects, the people who get involved are much more specific than those at the strategy level, if that makes sense.
And I don't know if it answers the question, Councillor, but if you think about the background of this strategy, it actually started with the spatial plan. So if you recall way back when we did that, when and before we got to the point where we drew blobs on maps about future growth areas, there was a significant amount of engagement around the aspirations of landowners and developers in those particular areas. Now, those conversations have continued on. So the specific work streams that have led to the development of things like Plan Change 2, which is the fast-tracked plan change for Pukehangi, has a direct and specific relationship with the individual landowners in that vicinity. We've extended that, and I mentioned earlier, Stavros and I had met with the main landowners who are captured within our residential expansion areas for the city. So we've met with them all to undertake some of that high-level master planning of stormwater, because previously they'd been left to manage within this constraints of their site. So all of them were extremely keen for us to take a more strategic and master planned approach to looking at some of those key constraints that often threatened their ability to develop. So those discussions have continued. Now, less so much about the strategy, but definitely with individual work streams and development areas and planned growth areas. So very much embedded and central to our conversation, because they are critical to our ability to see homes built and added to our city.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Just reading the framework, you just realise again how important relationships are. We wouldn't have a framework that hadn't been for the work that's gone on in developing the relationships with the people who've had input into the framework. And it is absolutely so necessary for our families to thrive in the Rotorua district. We do need this housing framework, so I'm so pleased that the work has been done and the consultation has proved successful as well. So thank you. If there are no further... Councillor Maxwell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One is, I just want to say thank you to the whānau that have created a lot of engagement opportunities for people to participate with the huiai iwi and all the avenues from Facebook to everything. Even now, unfortunately, every now and again, some people miss out, they fall through the cracks. and they come later, is there still an opportunity for others who are to engage in this, even though there's been very impressive engagement opportunities created?
My sense is our doors, my phone's always going, we're always open to talk to people about their ideas and thoughts. And I think particularly as we go forward, some of the more detailed things, so some people have a particular thing they're interested in, and we're very happy to involve people in that process and listen to their ideas and include them at any point.
Kia ora matua. The other thing is that the strategy itself is aspirational, and it enables people to participate in the ongoing implementation. So I think the strategy is okay to set in place because it's very broad and sets an aspirational direction. But as we develop and as actions change, there's going to be more opportunities for the appropriate engagement.
Thank you. Can I please have a mover and a seconder for recommendation 2? Thank you, Councillor Wang. Thank you, Councillor Yates. So I am, that the recommendation 2, that the committee recommends that Council approves He Papakainga, He Hapuri, Taurikura, Te Paupauro Taki Rotorua Homes and Thriving Communities Strategic Framework. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary. Thank you. Carried. Thank you very much indeed. Oh, yes, it was. Well, thank you. We'll go on to our next item, which is the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre, and we do have a presentation this morning. We look forward to that. But because we do have a significant number of manuhiri in our, obviously, very interested in this presentation, and I'm sure in their own areas of work, they've been involved over many years in the performing arts. In Rotorua. So I would like to ask Councillor Yates, please, if you would extend a welcome to our visitors this morning. Tēnā koe.
Nō reira, kia koutou, ka noho tonua hau, kia kore e whakaiti i a koutou. Engari, neira te mihi kau atu, kia koutou katoa, ko tai mai I tēnei ata, ki te tautoko I tēnei o a tātou nei whare. He whare motuhake, he whare o te hāpuri anō hoki, he whare whakahira-hira kia pua wai anō tō tātou nei ao o te o ngā manu tiori-ori, te ao o te whare tāpere, te ao anō hoki o tēnā o tātou ara ko te ao o te mahi toi, tērā o te ao kia whakarewa anō I tō tātou nei mahi kapahaka hoki. O tina kia koutou rā te ao o tērā kiriata, te ao kiriata, koutou rā o te film industry, nei rata mihi kaua atu kia koutou. So just a very warm welcome to our arts, culture, film, kapahaka lovers. Thank you so much for coming to join us on this very special journey regarding the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre. Nei ka mihi kaua atu kia koutou.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yates. And may I please make a particular mention to our former councillor colleague, Councillor Glenys Sharank. Tēnā koe, Glenys, so nice to see you here. You've spent many hours here working for your community over many years, and it's just lovely to see you again and looking so well. Tēnā koe. Yes. So thank you very much. Thank you, Jocelyn, and I'll get you to introduce your team and do the presentation. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā tātou e hui hui mai nei tēnei ata. Kia ora tātou. So I'm proud this morning to be part of presenting this project update alongside my team this morning. Today is just another step to increase awareness and understanding following our walkthrough last week where we went back into our building and with our elected members. And also before we actually present the contract to our councillors at the end of this month. So I wanted to take an opportunity following Councillor Yates' welcome to acknowledge and welcome our performing arts people here today who are here today and those who are actually watching online as well. Thank you for your support towards the mahi on the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre. But also have to acknowledge many other people have been involved in bringing our project forward today. We're not there yet, whānau, so hang in there. But for those who have supported the project, e mihi ana kia koutou katoa. Before I do hand over to my team, I just wanted to note that we're really, really excited to be at this point here today. So you'll be aware that our Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre has been closed now since 2017. And over the next 18 months, we are looking forward to bringing forward a beautiful building that will emerge that showcases both the heritage and the identity of our Rotorua community. We believe it's appropriate that our Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre will be lovingly restored, rejuvenated and reopened, and we really look forward to returning this taonga to our community. But it's much more than just a building that we're wanting to bring forward. And so this is a regionally significant asset. It'll be a 1,000-seat theatre. It'll be the only one in the central North Island. And we're imagining a future where our performing arts sector can grow and thrive even more here in Rotorua, drawing people from near and far, both nationally and eventually internationally, to Rotorua. We are a performance-ready community full of talented and amazingly gifted people, both young and old, who grow up performing, and there is a real opportunity to grow and support a new major industry within Rotorua, which will create a real economic benefit and actual economic growth. So the gorgeous geography of our region and district, it's no surprise to any of us that production companies and people are looking to bring business here into Rotorua. So just with that said, I want to introduce my team. Here this morning I've got Stuart, our Arts and Culture Director. We have Sian, who is the driving force and head honcho who will be looking after, and our Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre. And of course Amy, who is our project director and extraordinary organising person to keep us all in line. So with that said, I'll hand over to the team and allow them to begin working through the...
Tēnā rā tātou. Me mihi ka tika ki a koe Mercia, nā ui whakatuwhiringa kuaha mō tēnei kaupapa whakahira hioi I runga I o mihi te rā nei tēnā koe. O tira ki a koutou, ko ngā pou whakawhirinaki o tēnei mea, motuhake mō te taone nei tēnā koutou. Ki a koutou, ngā councillors, tēnā koutou, and who worship the mayor, tēnā koe. He iri tēnei no te aroa waka, no Ngāti Te Tākinga, ko Sian Elise White, tōku ingoa, I am privileged to be the Performing Arts Director for the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre. I, alongside the incredible team here, have been tasked with working on the project and the new iteration of the project, which is due to open soon, so in the coming months. So yeah, very, very privileged and honoured to sit here, having treated the boards alongside many of our, key supporters here today, and those that are watching online that have sent their apologies for not being able to be here in person. So ngā mihi nui kia koutou. I also want to acknowledge the Morrison whānau, who have been integral to the preparation and support of this this development phase. In particular, Whaia Donna, Hawe Morrison Jr., Whaia Norma and Matua Monti. I also want to acknowledge Ngāti Whakaue as mana whenua of the whenua i te rānei, and just the incredible support and partnership that we have been, they've brought on board in terms of the preparation of this process. So ngā mihi nui kia koutou. I started in this role 18 months ago, and I've spent the past 18 months talking to key community members, stakeholders, artists. I've spent the past 18 months looking through the 2030 vision, the creative strategy, which was dated 2015 to 2017, and that's needing an update, but that's currently being updated by strategy as we speak, and also the recently published Te Arawa 2050 vision, which was driven by Te Tatau o Te Arawa. And from that, where we go, I've been able to draw the essence of what our vision is moving forward, which is to empower the Rotorua community through high quality arts experience.
Just speak up, please. Can you just put, yes, draw that, thank you.
Ka pai.
Thank you.
Pai tēnā? Ka pai. So, as I mentioned, having looked through the 2030 vision, the Te Arawa, the 2050 vision, and also the creative strategy, I've been able to sort of pull out the essence of what all of those pieces of work had, focused on, and the vision, therefore, for the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre moving forward is to empower the Rotorua community through high-quality arts experiences in a leading regional facility. How will we do that? We'll do that by activating and engaging with the regional, national and international arts sector. We will do that through the implementation of innovative, impactful arts platforms, including online spaces to create community participation and arts access. And that the success of that was demonstrated during the lockdown level 4 with initiatives such as Lockdown Soul Sessions, which reached an audience of 500,000. Through the initiation of engagement, development and growth through innovative arts programming and capacity building initiatives. So building the capacity of our local performing arts sector, and through participation in the delivery of high quality local and regional arts experiences through partnerships. So the key difference between the Sir Howard Morrison Centre pre-closure to post is we're going from a local venue for hire model that is responsive to the local community's needs and holds physical events with a humble virtual presence, to global, to a leading regional arts service, acting local and thinking global, aligning with the Rotorua 2030 vision. Rotorua has a vibrant arts sector alongside as well the Te Arawa 2050 vision, which speaks about Te Arawatanga. The whakatauki being Mauri tū, Mauri ora, Te Arawa e. Te Arawatanga. Te Arawa is recognised as the cultural capital of Aotearoa, as well as the centre of Toi Māori excellence. So, it's widely known how how well Rotorua has done in the performing arts sector, and also in the Indigenous performing arts sector. So we really want to take this opportunity to uplift and platform Rotorua as the Indigenous arts epicentre of the Southern Hemisphere. Koe rate, yeah, koe rate manako. So, in a nutshell today, that is the essence of the vision moving forward for the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre. And I will now hand it over to GM for Arts and Culture, Stuart Brown, to talk about other steps forward. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you.
Morena koutou. And basically what the Siana's just described to you, the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre simply could not deliver on this vision in its current state and without investment. In 2017, we engaged with Horworth, a performing arts consultant, where we worked through a business case and brought that to council in 2018 that had a number of options to consider. And council approved option 6A, which I'll cover off shortly. But in 2017, the challenges we were experiencing with the facility were it was underutilised. It was an underutilised asset, not meeting audience needs. Configuration lacked flexibility, so those who are familiar with the concert chamber pretty much stuck with the end stage and inability to host a number of different genres of performing arts. Tied and dated, not aligned with the 2030 vision. It was a venue for hire model. It was set up as a business conference centre in the 90s, I think, and just really inadequate for performing arts. And then obviously in 2017, we discovered that it was also earthquake prone at 25% NBS. Subsequently, unknown at the time, was the building condition issues that existed around asbestos and water tightness issues, etc. Right, so the option I spoke about before which was option 6A. So this was the areas that council wanted to improve. So they were upgrading the Civic Theatre to 1,000 seats, so optimising the value of Shimpack, strong community usage with diversity and experience and increased patronage. Provides a contemporary performing arts environment that conveys our identity, increased economic performance, increased visitation, and diversity. And that's probably even more critical in this COVID world we live in now, and a great opportunity to build back better now. Being market competitive, of course being compliant, and maximising our vibrancy. This improves the well-being due to the increased civic pride, central city vibrancy and improved perception of Rotorua, and a safe venue after being earthquake strengthened. We had many letters of support in that process, and I think it's worth reflecting on some of these, and while there are only a few here, they represent thousands of people in our community. The first one here is a performance director of 36 years. The city of Rotorua is full of talent, and its local performing arts community deserves to be supported and seen as at its best. The restoration of this important community asset will undoubtedly see flourishing arts in the city and put Rotorua firmly on the map as a place to perform. I won't read them all. Just some key ones. Obviously one there from Tim Morrison as well in terms of his connection to the facility. Lakes Performing Arts Company as well in terms of over 600 students. You know, as a community, we are in desperate need of this space. Furthermore here, obviously Cliffs Curtis, internationally known. Sir Cliff? Yeah. Sir? Oh, kia ora. In terms of his some 30 years experience in the industry, and recognise from his experience around the world how important these places are. Rotorua Music Theatre as well, in terms of they recognise the importance of larger spaces to hold these musicals, and it is spirit recharging for the performing arts community and access, and ensuring we have access to large shows. And then from Tani Mahuta Gray, in terms of the importance of for the city and the community gathering experience that such a whare provide for their communities. The approved option to meet the investment objective that was approved in 2018, the key improvements was a 1,000-seat theatre, a flexible black box theatre of up to 300 seats, which is the concert chamber. All key spaces refurbished, a bar, cafe, level 1 studios with acoustics enabling recording and opportunities for the film industry as well. A new compliant lift, improving the acoustics in the high vac. So those that remember the old Sir Howard Morrison Centre would know that if you were operating in one space, we couldn't have the high vac going in the other spaces. Compliant and accessible, so we put a lot of effort into making sure that the spaces are accessible as possible, and then strengthening to at least 80% NBS. And the key benefits of doing all that work, our spaces will be enhanced, high fit for purpose, meet audience and user needs, increased revenue, economic benefit to the community, enhanced community wellbeing, definitely aligned to 2030, and market competitive, whereas before, where we didn't have all the amenities we needed, we had to be hired in, and those costs were passed on to users. So this is the redesign of the foyer. So this is a stunning exterior showcasing the heritage and cultural identity. This really is a partnership with Ngāti Whakaue's Mana Whenua, and also Te Arawa, in integrating Te Arawa stories. We're also telling the legacy of to Sir Howard Morrison within the new building, and it brings this vibrancy to the city. Despite when we were here last time, I think someone said good luck in getting that past New Zealand heritage. Well, we managed to do that. It wasn't easy, but we did get there in the end. It realises the potential of a significant community asset, and and it's also aligned to 2030, and as Sian mentioned before, the Te Arawa Vision 2050. Sian, do you just want to talk a little bit about the
Yes, of course. So I must acknowledge Henrietta Nicholas as well. She's been the lead cultural designer that's been working with the architects on this project. So what you see there is it's a whare nui. It's an acknowledgement to it's a modern day whare nui, with obviously the ama, the apex there representing the ama, and it is also a nod towards the Ngāti Whakaue Kaupapa Kōrero that was approved for the project, which is the realm of Manu Te Oriori, being the sky, the realm of Ngā Whā and the whenua Papatu Anuku, being obviously at the ground level, and then Tāne Mahuta and Tā Whirimātea, the realm of Ha, magic, sharing of breath and stories, being in the middle realm there. So yeah. Koera te kōrero, that's the kōrero for this design. Kia ora.
A new light-filled welcoming foyer. It's a contemporary space. It's finished to a high standard, much more natural light than the existing facility. It will be an amazing foyer to host, to have pre-show entertainment and drinks, and it just has that wow factor and really demonstrates what can happen and working with iwi in partnership in developing the future look of our city. Market competitiveness in terms of other venues around Aotearoa. It meets our needs of our audiences, our promoters and our users. It'll be strong and it'll be safe, enhanced access and compliant. I've gone the wrong way, sorry. The flexible black box theatre in the concert chamber. So we will create a theatre that we're going to take up to 100 to 300 in both a number of different stage setups, from thrust stage to in the round to end stage, what's the other way, the long way? Oh, thrust, okay, thank you. Upgrade the theatre service and acoustics, and the high-vac system as well. Flexible seating options, which I mentioned before. Upgrade of back-of-house areas in terms of the green rooms. And it'll be an affordable for our community to use, as everything will be in place and not necessarily needed to be hired in. Regionally significant is the 1,000-seat Civic Theatre. So we did a lot of research around this, and one of the reasons that Rotorua was missing out on many shows, and in fact 11 fully sold out shows in Napier that we did not have here in 2017 because of our capacity. It'll be the largest in the Bay of Plenty region. Once again, upgraded acoustics and high-vac, orchestra pit and orchestra pit lift, extended stage apron, new seats, better accessibility into stores and onto the stage, cultural design elements, and attractive commercial for touring productions. SHIMPAC is one of the many investments in our city in terms of creating that inner city vibrancy. And within the fairly short space, you can see here that the police station, both the upgraded Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre, the fairly new regional council building, Glen Hawkins building, and our lakefront, along with the new spa, Ngarapakawi Spa on the lakefront, will all have cultural elements that are providing a new identity for our city that's more reflective of who we are rather than what we have. And that also, of course, leads on to the Rotorua No. 1 new hotel development, and then the development of the Government Gardens Cultural Quarter in the future with the museum. And that really ends the first part of our presentation in terms of the public. We really just wanted to give you an update of what was agreed back in 2018 and also where we've got to in terms of cultural integration and what we're proposing for the new venue.
Oh, thank you very much for your presentation. You know, I was just sitting here thinking, you know, when we have our wastewater and we have our street lighting and parks and reserves, and sometimes it's very hard to get enthusiastic about those issues. But when we have something, a presentation like this, you sit here and go, yes, bring it on. So thank you so much for that presentation. Very exciting. So I'm going to open it up now to councillors, and of course, obviously, first up, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship.
Well, kia ora everybody, and thank you so much for coming. It really gladdens our heart when we're elected representatives to see the creative community, because it's been a hammering that you've had since 2017, when we really lost our way with that dreadful Kākora earthquake. But this rebuilding is something very exciting. And the way that you're doing it, I think with the steering group and Mrs. Trumper, who has been actively involved there, how fantastic to deliver a product like this for us today. Showing us around last week, certainly for those of us with a creative heart, and some of you may not have been in there, the Patu Pairahi was certainly dancing around all those spaces, and you could feel it, the need for us to restore our creative heart and soul is definitely in that building. And so it's reached a new stage, and I think it's a different life. The convention centre was the convention centre, and it really worked for us as a community then, but now this is something quite different, quite new, and I know nationally really held in high regard, especially New Zealand Opera, New Zealand Ballet, those others that you mentioned, 11 major events that we've missed out on because we haven't had the facility. So you're going to restore hope for us all and civic pride in this building. I think the one question that we always asked before, and we knew it before when we had community groups that helped in putting productions on there, was the affordability locally. And you did mention that here for us, and that's something that we're pleased to see and hear, that it will be pitched right so that our feeder productions can come through and deliver there on that big stage and get that big stage feeling for us. So thank you for including that feel in there too, so that our school kids, our musical theatre, as Natasha said, feels that they too have got skin in the game in that building that they love. So it's terribly exciting. It's been a long time coming, but out of the ashes comes something quite magnificent, and actually even more significant, that it will tell our local story about our people, our place and our culture. So very exciting. I'm sure along the way you've found things that we didn't want to see and know, but we'll deal with that in the next session. That's so on any venture, I well understand that. But just to know the strength of our creative community here today, it'll be a very grand opening with the community and all of us involved. So kia kaha to you all. We'll get there. It's still a wee way away. Yeah, we need it. We need it now.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my apologies for lateness. It's certainly been a day of culture for me, being out at New Zealand Māori Arts and Crafts, where the 46th intake of students to the prestigious wood and stone carving schools, along with Rawiri and Cliff, who were there this morning, was a treat to represent the council at, and this is more of the kaupapa of Rotorua claiming its space as the Indigenous capital of Aotearoa. My question, the question I didn't get a chance to ask during the walkthrough the other day, because I think it's really exciting, this blend of contemporary with historic, was when was the building originally built, and the historic status of it with the Historic Places Trust?
So it was originally built in 1931. It was built in a Spanish missionary style. So those who have been in Rotorua for some time will remember the courtyard was actually a courtyard, an outside courtyard with a fountain in it, and it is a Category 1 status in terms of a heritage building.
Councillor Maxwell.
Tuatahi ke te mihi au kia koutou, nau mai, haere mai ki tēnei, te whare o te kaunihera o Rotorua, ke te mihi, ke te mihi. Before asking my question, I just want to say thank you for the beautiful presentation. But last week we did enjoy walking through all the areas that have been highlighted there and brought back a lot of memories, as sure did. Sian, thank you also for acknowledging the Morrison whānau, and Lady Morrison and Donna and Howie and them. Thank you. I want to touch on the fundraising effort also, Brett. Tremendous that you've been working hard behind the scenes with others, of course, and that's why organisations like that I'm part of, NZCT, came on with their $1 million, especially when Sir Owen Glenn, a very good friend of Sir Howard's, supported that. I'm glad that you acknowledge the talent that's come out of our city over many years. Sir Howard himself, Temuera, Cliff, and there was a great comment there from Te Atameda, Jenny Ward Leyland. She herself had taken on board being so involved in theatre and film acting that she made a goal and learnt Te Reo, the language, and has been a big supporter of positive things like this. And finally, just before my final question, there was a timeline in the February, I think, 8 Scott Avenue was held in our Energy Event Centre. Well, it was excellent. Just imagine that show being in there earlier this year. I mean, one of the best shows I've been to for a long time. Sang for 2 hours and never had a drink. The question that I've got is, you touched on it earlier, all the different areas, can they all, in the past you had to book one of the venues and couldn't hire the other party out. So if all the areas were operating, can our theatre cater for for that. Thank you, Brownie.
Yes, they can. So we can operate the banquet room along with the 1,000-seat theatre and the concert chamber concurrently, or they can be individual, or it can be options of either or. We have way more capacity now in terms of the number of people we can have in the building, you know, and the upgraded in terms of the toilet blocks and things like that to cater for that volume are in the new plans.
Yeah. And finally, I'm pleased about the fact that we've got buy-in for a 1,000-seater. In the past, we just didn't have the courage to take it up from 750, 800 to 1,000, and we've missed out over the years. Mā te atua koutou e manaki. Kia ora no tātou katoa.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. I knew there was a question in there somewhere. I felt one coming. I only wish it was coming a bit earlier. Thank you for that. Mr. Berryman Kemp.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. No, look, that's stunning, and it's certainly just acknowledging it has been a long journey. My question is, I was really buoyed to see the Think Global approach and that concept to use new technology to bring in a wider global audience. My question is, I don't think when we originally went down this pathway, we were thinking about how we could utilise technology for global interaction, which I sense is what you're talking about, because I had assumed that there'd be data cabling and we could record stuff, but that's about it. But what you've presented moves it to another phase. So my question is, can you please expand more on how you think the global audience can participate in events that takes it from 1,000 seat to 100,000?
Kia ora. The focus for that, for the enabling of that level of virtual presence will be in the operations and in the staff. So we have a staffing focus of marketing and a virtual social platform lead. Sort of that's what we're focusing on and creating that ability in the team as we move forward. COVID-19 really presented some interesting challenges for us as a team, as an arts and culture team, where we had to think on our feet in terms of delivering events and bringing people together whilst encouraging physical distancing. So one of the things that we did was we trialled an online event platform via the Aronui Indigenous Arts Festival pages, and that was called a program called Lockdown Soul Sessions, where many of the artists from 8 Scott Ave, Rewa Ututaonga, Jack Grace, Auntie Chrissy Knapp, Bobby Mihi Howard, who's here today, and others. And actually we had performers as well who are from Rotorua but are based overseas. And what they did was they became admins to the page, signed in and delivered half an hour to 45 minutes of live streamed music right from their lounge room to our community. We weren't sure how that was going to go. We had a very humble budget. We were supported by RECT for that delivery of that program, and we were absolutely blown away by the response. We had an audience of 500,000 over the 7-week lockdown. So we've already proven that that model works, and we reached people as far as Brazil, the UK, and we've got all of the data, obviously, from our Facebook from our statistics from Facebook. So yeah, we're going to continue in that way, and obviously that will be a major focus of the staff and the operations moving forward. Kia ora tātou.
Yes, look, thank you for that. And I guess that it's just that thing that does head exactly to where I was thinking of, because I guess, Madam Chair, the change that I've seen post-COVID is now how do we engage in an audience that doesn't have to be physically present. I guess Stuart's challenge is that we can still get an income from. But actually, if you think about it, obviously Disney's just launched the Mulan movie on an online streaming platform because they don't think they can get enough people into theatres. So it's a new, exciting time as to how we can actually derive an income and increase participation in some sort of hybrid mix. So I was quite keen to find out about that.
And I'll just add to that as well, we have world-class production companies here too, such as Hikoi Productions, led by PDP Curtis and co, Anton Steele in the house, Bay of Plenty Films. So we're also in conversations about how we can capture live performance, much like is the case with Broadway. They've done live performances of Hamilton, captured it and streamed it. So I think this facility, the upgrade will certainly allow for that. So it is exciting times. Ngā mihi.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question? I mean, obviously it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for various groups to put on their performances. Are they still going to be able to use that beautiful facility there to actually practice performances? Because in the past, a lot of times it was used actually for the performers to practice in there. So is that still going to be the case, or is it strictly now going to be basically a venue for hire and that sort of thing?
Oh no, absolutely. We've actually accounted for more rehearsal spaces in the mezzanine area. So there's actually a 12 by 12 space that will be specifically used for the New Zealand Ballet, Ardea as a breakout space, New Zealand Opera as a breakout space and rehearsal space, dance. We had Taiaroa in here earlier from Okarika Dance Company. So that was taken into consideration because that was one of the major feedbacks from our promoters and stakeholders.
Hence my question.
And they can also, will ensure that there's adequate pack-in days to allow them to rehearse prior to the opening of their shows.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Mercy, Councillor Yates.
Through you, Madam Chair, tēnā koe, o tira tēnā koutou. Look, firstly, although I gave a mihi at the beginning, I'd certainly like to acknowledge once again the outstanding whānau that have come to support this presentation. I've been waiting for this since I got onto council, so it's really, really exciting to be at this place and space and time. The question that I do have is to do, and it's a question that I do ask often, but I want to ask it in our public arena. It's around the accessibility and in particular the entrance points. I want to know, given that we won't necessarily be able to drive up now, and it has been a question out there in our community, how will our community be able to, especially our elderly, our kaumātua and our disabled community, how will they now be able to access the facility?
Kia ora. Obviously post the occurrence on March 15 last year, there's been significant increase in security expectations around the ability to drive up to buildings. So no, you won't be able to drive up to the entranceway of this theatre. However, we have carefully considered this, and as a team we'll be discussing ways in which if you have to park, I think it's a 20-metre distance from the car park to the front entrance, our team will be there to assist those that need assistance coming in through the front entrance. So we will build that into our operations model to ensure that the space is accessible and that we're helping all those who need help to get to the front door to come forward. Kia ora.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the presentation this morning. I do want to thank those who have come also in support and of course for the work that you've been doing to assist this project to get to where it has got so far. So thank you very much indeed. Again, thank you, Jocelyn, to you and your team for the presentation this morning, and also for the walkthrough last week. It's certainly been able to assist us also in getting our head around the space, and also the work that has to be done to bring it to fruition, to completion. So thank you very much. I am going to take a 10-minute break now so that we can speak to our whānau here, and so we'll reconvene at... Yes, actually what I will do is I'll ask please for a mover and a seconder that we go into confidential. Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I'll put that, yes, and I need to explain why. Thank you very much. There you go. Thank you. We do have two items in our public excluded session. That's the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre. It's a project update, which I presume has the financials as well there, and the disposal of council-owned property, 7/15 T Street. So those are the two items, and so I'll have a mover and a seconder. I do have a mover and a seconder, Mrs. Trumper, Mr. Thomas. that we go into public excluded. I'll put that motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you, carried. And we'll take a 10 minutes recess. Thank you.